We've got Andrew Miller dropping by from Hook'em Headlines. Andrew, how you doing tonight?
Good, Mark. How are you? Thanks for having
Doing
me.
well, doing well. And as stated to these guys, I'll get out of the way and let you guys chop it up. But we'll get started by what you would like to see this Saturday. What piques your interest the most?
Oh man, there's a lot there. What's up, Nick? By the way,
Hey man, what's going on?
I think for this Saturday, I want to see, I want to see how we're getting at it in the trenches. I think like a lot of the speculation, a lot of the talk, a lot of the reports coming out of spring ball has been, Texas being able to run the ball very, very effectively, almost too effectively, up the middle. That you want to see the defensive line hold their own a little bit, and you want to see how maybe the second team defensive line is able to do against the first team offensive line, to see how we're able to rotate and how that depth is coming along. You got guys like Dre Bledsoe, like Aaron Bryant, that you really want to see make that leap this year. You also want to see guys like Tia Savea really, really show what they can bring to the table out of the transfer portal along the defensive line. On offense, I mean, I'm excited to see what some of the new receivers can do, especially against this really kind of beefed up secondary. This is there's a lot of new pieces on the team, and there's a lot of good returning starters. And so seeing how it all meshes together on offense is going to be really fun on Saturday.
Before we keep it rolling here, Nick, thanks so much for being here, man. Everybody check out Nick's work at Nino's Corner. It's right here on YouTube. It's easy to find. You'll want to make that a destination for your Texas football coverage. So definitely do that. There it is, Nick Battle, Nino's Corner. We always appreciate Nick stopping by. Nick, thank you for that, and appreciate your breakdown, man.
All right, man. Appreciate it. Hook 'em.
And we'll keep it rolling both with Andrew, and we got a little perspective from Fanatic perspective here. What's going on, man?
How we doing? Thanks for having me on, Mark. Good to
Doing
be
well.
here.
Good to see you here. First appearance, at least with myself here at the Voice of College Football. So welcome, and thanks for being here. We just brought Andrew on the line here from Hook'em Headlines as well. So I'll toss out the same question to you in terms of what you're looking out for today, and then I'll let Matthew take over, and you guys can ensue on some high-level Texas football talk.
Sounds good. So we're just talking in terms of right now and outlook for the.
Yeah, I was just saying in regards to this Saturday, in
Oh,
terms of
absolutely.
Saturday spring game. Yeah.
Yeah. So from my vantage point, I'll touch a little bit on offense and then defense. Offensively, the big name Arch Manning. Quinn Ewers is very established at the quarterback position, and I know what to expect from Quinn. I think he's going to have a sensational season, health willing. That's my big question with Quinn: is can he stay healthy? I need to know. With that being said, I need to know that Arch can run this second team offense, and run it confidently, especially with the complexity that there is in Steve Sarkisian's scheme. And so I think Saturday is a big showcase for Arch, because he's kind of been, held back a little bit, and it's been kind of behind the scenes. And, we really want to see if he can run this thing full tilt. So that's what I'm looking to see offensively. Can they be sharp? Can they be on time? Because the last two seasons with Quinn Ewers as our quarterback, we've had to use two quarterbacks. So that's very, very, very significant for me this Saturday, just to feel good about it, and as well as feeling good about Arch's development. Going into when he's eventually going to take over as our starter. Defensively, can we stop the run? We've been an elite run defense the last couple years, but the suspects that were keys to that success for us are now gone, right? Tavondre Sweat, Byron Murphy, Jalen Ford. So that middle of the defense, I'm really going to be paying attention to my young boys like Anthony Hill, a veteran like David Benda at linebacker, and having those comms, especially with now having helmet communication, but also our defensive tackles, which I'm sure Andrew's talked about Murphy and Tavondre Sweat, two of the highest graded defensive tackles from last year, right? So the middle of that defense in general, I want to make sure that we're not just gonna, Swiss cheese through there, especially with having a team like Michigan week 2, right? So offense and defense, that's what I'm looking at.
Yeah, just to piggyback off that, I do want to see Quinn Ewers drive the ball. I think that's something he needs to work on. He tends to throw off his back foot too much for my liking. If he can drive it a little bit more, I want to see that. I don't know if we'll get that in the spring game, but just going into the season in general. And then, yeah, Steven hit on it. Up the middle, you lose your 2 best players, and then you also lose a veteran linebacker in Jalen Ford, who's going to take over for him, who does well, especially, again, with the in-helmet communication. I think that's a big thing. I think that's a bigger thing on the defensive side of the ball than the offensive side of the ball, honestly. So who's going to take that role? Are they going to experiment with multiple guys in the spring game, and then who earns that role, I guess? I do want to see from Tia Sevilla up the middle. We're probably going to be looking in the portal at the defensive tackle position. Bill Norton did enter from Arizona. I think he's a good player. Obviously no one's going to match Murphy or Sweat. So can we finally get Alfred Collins to live up to the potential? For God's sakes, we've heard it for like 3 years. Please, I'm asking, just live up to your potential. We saw Murphy, the staff got the best out of him. The staff got the best out of Tavondre Sweat. This is the last guy. It really is. This is the last guy with Texas fans have been begging, play up to your potential, because we've heard it. We heard Chris Ash when he was here say, this guy is as talented as the Bosa brothers and Chase Young. That is something Chris Ash said when he was here on the 40 Acres, and he just has not played up to that level. We've heard practice reports of him playing up to that level, but he doesn't do it consistently in the game, so that's another thing to look out for too as well.
Yeah, I mean, Matthew, to your point, and Steve and I, that was kind of the first thing I mentioned for the spring game was, what are we going to be able to do along the defensive line? Not to beat a dead horse with that, but yeah, I mean, with Alfred Collins and Vernon Broughton, I mean, I still think Broughton has some untapped potential in him. I think that pad level wise, technique wise, I mean, he's a 4th, 5th year player now. So I don't know how much more you can do with him in terms of like adding weight where it needs to be or getting stronger. But I mean, for him, just technique wise, maybe getting a little bit more proficient, plugging those gaps and run defense, getting to the ball carrier. Alfred Collins, yeah, the consistency factor is really the thing. I mean, I think what you don't want to see is some of those ups and downs where maybe you get 5 games where maybe he's like one of the highest graded defensive tackles in the SEC and he's really making a huge impact always around the line of scrimmage. And then you have another 5 games where he's just a little bit invisible on the field. The effort's not where you need it to be. I don't know how much you're going to learn from the spring game for that, but you want to see him make those strides through the end of spring ball, really finish on a strong note, carry that momentum into preseason camp. Arch Manning, Steven, I like that point that you bring up there because like some of the stuff we've heard from spring ball, we've heard that, he's gotten stronger, really got down to work in off-season workouts, is getting the ball out quicker. Deep ball has been looking good, but still, like you're hearing about things here and there, more, complicated developing route concepts. He's not on the same page with his receivers. He's getting picked off by some of the younger corners. I mean, I guess he's gotten picked off multiple times this spring, including in last weekend's scrimmage. So, not to like press the panic button there because I don't think that's any reason to, but you want Arch to be a little bit further along than Malik was last year. Arch has had 2 years. This is his 2nd year in the system, and he hasn't had those injury issues that Malik had on the 40, which kind of limited his development. So, I want to see Arch be able to really hit some pinpoint throws, look to be on the same page with the receivers this weekend.
I mean, if you look at Arch right now, and I'm glad you brought up Malik Murphy because he had to play 2 games last year. Yep. And he started a game against a super veteran BYU team that we beat, 35-6 or whatever. And then that Kansas State game that was literally down to the last snap. Right?
A roller coaster the whole game.
Yeah.
And then the year before, you had Hudson Card, right, who had to fill in and play the Texas Tech game in multiple games, including finishing out all of Bama, right? So until Quinn Ewers shows me that he can play a full 12 and postseason, Arch Manning's going to play next year at some point. We have to assume that. So he has to show, it just can't be problematic. I understand development and all that. Like Hudson Card wasn't perfect, but we knew when Hudson Card was in the game, our offense was going to be on time. We knew we're probably going to hit our average. Same thing with Malik last year. We averaged 35 points per game. We pretty much hit that when he was there. So as long as it's not we're falling off a cliff, right? Like you saw that with Florida State when Jordan Travis came in or went down, right? Offensive productivity went off a cliff. You do not want that with QB2, especially with Arch and how delicate everything already is with the Mannings and his development. We want to make sure we're on track. So I think that's really, really important.
And, Zune, you mentioned Arch being kind of that one snap away from being the guy, and you always got to be ready on the sideline. And, I think to Malik last year, you had guys like Adonai Mitchell, like JT Sanders that you could just throw up the ball to. I don't know if we have that guy this year. And I'm not saying we don't have weapons because we got weapons all over the place. Amari Niblack, I think, is going to be a fantastic downfield threat. I think Bond, Golden, they're going to be awesome. So is Wingo, Jonte in his second year. But, Arch is going to have to really time his throws well. You can't just lob up these 50-50 balls and hope your guy's going to bring them down. You got to be on point.
Well, that's another thing too about the spring game. Like, will we see separation with whoever our number one wide receiver is going to be? Because last year you had two guys that are basically two number one wide receivers. This year you may not have a guy that's like a bona fide number one wide receiver. And that's the thing to Quinn too. Quinn's going to have to step up and play a little bit better because I think the wide receivers helped him out a lot last year. I think it's his turn this year to help out the wide receivers. So we'll see what happens. And on the Arch Manning point, he just can't do what Malik Murphy did in the second half of Kansas State. Like, Malik Murphy tried to lose that game for Texas in the second half. You have enough talent around you to where if you just take control of those reins and you steady the ship, you're good enough to just continue winning games with this team. Unless, obviously, like if it goes out in the Georgia game, I don't expect us to beat Georgia with Arch Manning as a quarterback. But let's say it's Kentucky. We can beat Kentucky with Arch Manning as a quarterback. That needs to be the goal for me, is with Arch Manning this year.
Yeah, I also don't see the same number of games this year that you can get Arch Manning in like garbage time as you did with Malik and Arch, or I guess Malik and Arch last year. So you don't have those extra reps they're going to get garbage time during the fall.
Yeah, the only conference game you have is going to be Vanderbilt on the road. Hopefully we can put someone in.
Isn't that one like week 8 though?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Hopefully, like if someone does get hurt, that's the game that it happens. Everything else early, I mean, you're not going to do it versus Michigan. We play Colorado State, correct? So I mean,
you're going to have to get people snaps in Colorado State.
Yeah, you're going to have to.
I think UTSA is going to be a solid ball club this year too.
Yeah, the schedule is difficult, but you're going to have to find places for like 10 to 15 snaps for these guys, because if I don't want Arch Manning's first snap to come in the big house or versus like Georgia week 5 or 6 or whatever. So I don't want that happening.
Yeah. Not to get like squirrel mentality of like just like position change storylines with you mentioning the defensive backfield there, Matthew, but like one of the things that I thought is really interesting this spring, and you mentioned the wide receiver defensive back matchups. Like, I think on the defensive side of the ball, our strength might actually be the secondary this year. I'd be interested to hear. I talked with Tarek, one of the other guys on the site, on our show last week about who the best 5 would be to start in the defensive backfield. And I think a lot of people feel that Jahdae Barron at field corner would be the way to go. I mean, obviously he's been cross training there this spring, and Gilbo's been looking good. I mean, am I the only one here that's in the camp that we probably should be starting Barron at corner this fall, especially against some of the better offenses?
I'm not against that. I think we should just be cross training everyone. I think you have enough athletes back there to where you have Makuba in the slot sometimes, boundary corner, sometimes safety. Like, that's who I think it should go. We'll see what happens. I don't know if that's going to happen. But yeah, it would be interesting if they kind of did it like a basketball situation where you throw your best 5 out there and see how it goes. I don't know if they're willing to do that, but I would be fine with that, because I do agree with you. I think the secondary is going to be the strength this year. It just is. We have more talent back there than we have in a very long time compared to the front 4 and even front 7.
We have a perfect combination of a lot of things, right? Experience, speed. We have different types of players for different types of matchups. I think we have a lot of guys that can play very well against the run, and it's not, and being able to tackle in space. But to the point about Jade playing field corner, my hesitance with that is he's had trouble against speed, and being beaten downfield in particular. I think he's really good in zone. He's really good when he's got eyes on the quarterback and he's instinctive. If he had those abilities, and this is what he has to show, because if he could do all that, he would have been gone. I mean, let's keep it a buck, right? Like he got his NFL eval, and part of that problem was, I mean, go look at the Oklahoma State game, and I don't want to pick on the guy because I'm a big Jade Barron fan. I've been on Twitter saying Jade Barron first team everything because I love the way what he brings from the nickel, but I want to see him have that development, and because if you have an issue with speed, technique wise, you have to be on point playing field corner. And I know Terrence Brooks has not been flashy, it's not been sexy, and people still have a bad taste in their mouth from the Washington game, but he was solid. It wasn't something where I felt better about Terrence Brooks than I did about Deshaun Jameson. I'll be 100% there. So my thing is, how am I matching up each week? For example, Michigan, I know we're going to be playing phone booth football that week. It's going to be 12 personnel. I might have to be in my traditional package where I only have 4 DBs. So Jade might just be out there at field, and I don't have to play a nickel because I'm playing a third backer. I'm just saying. And then we're going to play people like Jeff Lebby, right, and Ole Miss, where we're going to have to spread it out. That's where the strength of this secondary will really show, because I got multiple options based upon how you want to play me, right? So now if I got to play 6 DBs against Ole Miss, I can have Makuba and Jade and Jalen Gilbo on the field at the same time, right? So to me, it's just how we want to play it. But at least I have that depth there, because there's going to be attrition at some point, and guys are going to go down with the type of schedule we're playing. So I feel really, really good. I agree that secondary is probably the strength of this defense that we feel the best about, which is crazy to say as a Texas fan.
Yeah, and I like Jalen Gilbo at the nickel. His issues have been injury. If he can stay healthy, I think he can produce there. And people need to. I mean, Terrence Brooks, what did he just turn 20 years old? I think he came on.
Yes.
Yeah. So he's got plenty of time to get better. He doesn't worry me at all. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Honestly, I'm just more worried about up the middle, like we talked about earlier. So I like the secondary. I think it's very deep, and it, like you said, it's got a good mixture of experience with like Michael Taff and those guys back there, and then you have Xavier Philsmeet coming in too. So I think this can be one of the best secondaries in the country if it's developed properly.
Derek Williams year 2.
Yes.
I mean, there's stuff to be excited about. I do pay attention though to what Sark has been saying. He's been throwing Easter eggs out there. I want playmakers. I want people to go get me the football. I know y'all can cover. I know y'all can execute the assignment. We're not worried about that anymore. I know even the Washington game, if people are going to mosh you, mosh. But I need people that can take the ball away. That's the next level of having that elite, almost scary secondary, right? And I know that's going to go in tandem with the pass rush. I think we're going to be better at edge.
Yeah.
To where people are going to have to get the ball out a tick faster. But I'm excited to see them get turnovers, get takeaways. I think people like Derek Williams are going to be forcing fumbles, right? Like, some of the things we expected from last year's crew that we didn't really get with some of the people that we brought on. I see that coming with people like D. Will. So I'm excited.
Even Manny Muhammad, I mean, had an interception in the scrimmage. I mean, that guy, freakiest cornerback we've had in a while here. So it's exciting. I 100% agree with your edge point. I mean, you got Sorrell there, Ethan Burke, Trey Moore, Colin Simmons, who I think is going to have a really good year. So the edge, we're going to have to rely on more this year. Last year, they were okay. They weren't great. We were great up the middle. This year, we're going to have to be great on the edges, and we can get by with, the C-plus game up the middle. That's what it's going to have to be. That's what the hands we're dealt with right now.
I think linebacker could be better. I know we lost Jalen Ford, but I think every other part of that linebacker room is deeper. I think Blackwell another year. I think Benda's going to be better. I think Blackshear gives us some SEC quality depth, and I think Anthony Hill is really going to make a leap. I mean, I know that it's going to be challenging for him, I think, a little bit to take on more of that true Mike linebacker role. But yeah, I guess that would be another thing to watch, is how he can kind of handle some of those assignments if they test him a little bit in the spring game on Saturday.
Yeah, I think that's what it comes down to in that room. If they want to be better this year at the linebacker position, it's going to be Anthony Hill. Like, if Anthony Hill takes that next step, I completely agree with that. I think we're better at linebacker.
There's a lot of pressure on Coach Nansen right off the bat.
Yeah.
There's a lot of pressure on Coach Nansen because you don't want to have a Harold Perkins situation like last year in year 2 when Harold Perkins had to assume that Mike responsibility, and it overwhelmed him a little bit. I felt like I think he improved throughout the season for LSU, but there's been some of that concern with Anthony Hill. If it's too much, if we're putting too much on his plate, I think he's been one of the people that has been practicing with the mic in his helmet, and which, you know, IQ wise, you need to be able to communicate as well. So that's a positive. But I'm with y'all. I mean, in terms of the back, we have more, just like we talked about the diversity with the secondary, you have a diversity with linebackers. I mean, don't sleep on Leona Leifau, right? Yeah. And Mo Blackwell would have been my breakout player last year if not for his injury. He missed a lot of time, or else, you know, he probably would have been a bit more part of our defense last year. So a lot of options there, but with Anthony Hill, I'm very protective of his development. But I am excited to see a Texas defense that has Anthony Hill and Colin Simmons on the field at the same time. That's going to be crazy.
Yeah.
I think that in 25, that could be an all SEC first team duo right there. I think that, I mean, because realistically, Simmons, if you like, what did Hill have last year? Like 5.5, 6.5 sacks?
I think he was around 4 or 5.
I think he's 4.5. Yeah.
Was he 4? I thought he had more. Okay. But even that is like crazy for a true freshman linebacker. Like, if you can get like 6, 7 sacks out of a true freshman, that's a future first rounder right there, more than likely, especially on a defense as talented as Texas is. So I think, yeah.
I completely agree with what you said, Stephen, about Mo Blackwell. I think he's like the Swiss Army knife in the defense, and we need someone to cover running backs out of the backfield. Like David Benda and Jalen Ford struggled with that, and I think he's the guy for that job. So hopefully he can stay healthy. That's been his issue too. So I'm hoping for a big year from him.
There's one other freak that we haven't mentioned, that Jelani McDonald. He's gonna play somewhere. I mean, enough's enough. He needs to be on the field at some. I mean, he started making noise on special teams at the very end of the season. I know we mentioned all the people in the secondary, but I feel like PK and this brain trust on Texas defense, when you have a weapon like Jelani McDonald, again, the diversity of offenses will play. He has to find a place somewhere for a talent like that.
Yeah, well, we can rotate at safety with like 4 quality guys this year.
Yeah.
We have that group. I mean, 5 guys, I think, that could each fit into that rotation. I don't think we're going to rotate 5, but I think McDonald, probably definitely Makuba, Williams, and probably Taff. See if Filsamy can work into that by the end of the season. I think would kind of be the ideal situation there. So, I mean, I think the defensive backfield is, I think we all agree that's a really solid part. I just like, I want to see too, I guess one thing that I didn't say that I wanted to see on the offensive side of the ball that I think would be cool to see in the spring game and just moving forward is, like, can Neto continue to kind of get that push for those first team reps? I think the upside of the offensive line, especially in run blocking, is much higher with Neto than it is Hayden Connor. You get that experience factor. Hayden Connor, probably more consistent pass blocker from what we know, but I think kind of like DJ Campbell compared to Cole Hudson last year, if Neto can really, kind of push things along, develop well, and, seal off those first team reps, that the upside for the offensive line is going to be even that much higher.
Yeah, I mean, there's a possibility that you have 4 out of the 5 guys from that big class a couple years ago starting on the offensive line, which would tell you all you need to know what Sark's done with this roster compared to the previous head coaches. So that would be awesome. I'd love to see that. That would be interesting too. That's another thing, like how they rotate the offensive line during the spring game, and I think is something to look out for as well.
Cross training there too. Kyle Flood has been big on the cross training aspect. We know Cole Hudson can play multiple positions. It's been interesting too because I've been hearing that he's also worked at left guard as well. So it seems like they've really ramped up the competition at Hayden Connor's spot, right? And it's just, hey, we know you've been good, but we're trying to be great. And especially if they're trying to execute more of some of the zone run scheme stuff, then yeah, that will favor people like Neto more than it would a Hayden Connor in that particular situation. So how those reps break down is going to be interesting. I think some of the center reps behind Jake Majors always interest me as well. So, and Cam Williams, just seeing him being consistent, right? Because he's playing next to DJ, and they have the chance to be Bash Brothers over there.
Yeah.
But I also can see them being heavily penalized. So I want to make sure that the comms over there is good. The handoffs are good in pass pro. I mean, DJ seems to have made just strides. I'm glad he just got to play last year. He needed those reps. So interested to see how, that all, where people are lining up come spring.
Yeah, we still got 17 scholarship guys along the offensive line, even after Kirkland left for the portal today. So, I mean, I'd say that those 17 guys, 13 or 14 are like guys that you would probably feel comfortable for getting first somewhere in the first or second team. And so, because like you got Brandon Baker, Daniel Cruz that are true freshmen early enrollees that are already like getting some second team reps and doing well. And I mean, Trevor Gooseby making some strides. I think like Connor Stroh could be a guy that could, future solid backup in, Steven, you mentioned Cole Hudson, like your utility guy. Hayden Connor might be a backup this year. That's kind of crazy to say. So this offensive line, could it? I mean, yeah, it could be the best in the SEC if it lives up to the hype. But
Georgia's always got some mutants, so I'll hold off on that one. But we could be second for sure. I think that's the goal to shoot for in the SEC.
Yeah. I mean, I think we knew the quarterback offensive line was going to be the strength of the offense this year. So kind of got to rely on that. But also I think the running back room might end up being a strength too, just because Jaden Blue and CJ Baxter are both really solid.
Yeah, I think there's a possibility all 5 of those guys are going to deserve reps at some point in the year. And I don't know if we're going to have enough reps to give it out to them, because I think Trey Wisner is going to have, he's a good enough player to get quality reps for this team. He is, but I don't know if he's going to be able to crack or get on the field enough.
He at least will get some of the Keelan Robinson work.
Yeah.
So there's something there. And I wish it was more, but if Jaden Blue, as long as the ball security's there, you got to play him, right? And CJ's going to be your thumper, and pad level. Andrew, you're big on pad level. CJ, if he can stay healthy too, that's another one on my health list. Because his back and everything was acting up with him the end of the season. I mean, he limped off the field every single game.
He's got to get in the weight room. I mean, he's got all the talent in the world, but it's he looks smaller than Christian Clark and Jarrett Gibson from day one, from some of the pictures coming out of off-season workouts. Christian Clark and Jarrett Gibson both look like they've been in strength training programs in college for 5 years. And CJ looks like he's still a junior in high school for, compared to them at least. And so, I mean, I'm not trying to hate on CJ. I think that's just the case. Like you mentioned, I mean, he hurt his ribs game 1, I think, back injury. Yeah. Being able to take that contact, it's only going to get more brutal this year, playing in the SEC, playing against Michigan. You got a 12-team playoff. If you make that, that's more games in the postseason. It's
the best thing though. The real quick, the best thing though about our backs, pretty much all of them have hands. So you're not really giving the defense. You're not tilting the defense, so to speak. If somebody, there's certain teams, or we've had times where certain so-and-so's in the backfield, we're not going to run a screen. He's not going to even run, he's either pass pro or he's going to get the football, right? And the fact that at least CJ, was able to catch the football quite a bit last year. We know what Jaden Blue can do. We've been lining up Jaden Blue in the slot, in certain personnel packages. Trey Wisner can catch the football. I don't know about the 2 young boys, but just those first three alone, I like the fact that can keep Sark honest with his play calling, regardless of who's in the game, without having to tilt things. That's always been a big deal for me with my running back room and the versatility there.
I like that you mentioned that, Steven, just because like one of the things that wasn't covered a lot, I get, because I think he was from Florida, out of state recruitment, usually SEC territory. Like, I remember I covered a few like camp setting 7-on-7s for CJ Baxter a couple of years ago. And he's really an underrated route runner. Like he can in 7-on-7 ball, against some like faster linebackers, blue chip defensive backs, like he was holding his own out there, running crisp routes, he looked ahead of the curve from where you would see like a running back in 7-on-7. And I knew he was still developing at the time and still learning. I mean, obviously last year learning Sark's offense as he went along, but like he had some crazy highlight reel catches last year, one-handed catches. So like, I mean, as a receiver, I think he could be really, really good. So yeah, I think that there's a lot that you can do with this backfield. And
we're one of the highest usage screen teams in the country. So
yeah.
You got to catch the football if you play for Sark and this Texas offense.
Was it last year or the year before where like 5 straight games our first play was a wide receiver screen?
Last year.
It was last year.
It was so funny.
And it might be even more this year because the positionless football we got and all the guys that are just like sub 11-second 100-meter guys. Like, I mean, wide receiver room, tight ends. I mean, Nye Black, you can get him out there too. So I don't know. We're going to do that a lot, I think.
And then what camp do you guys fall in? I know like the fan base is kind of split on this, but like if health aside, who would you want to get the majority of reps at running back? Do you want Blue or do you want Baxter?
I think it depends on the game. I mean, you can game plan them different ways, but I mean, I think things are trending Jaden Blue right now just because of how physical of a runner he is. But like, I think if Baxter can stay healthy, ultimately the job could be his. I mean, the ceiling on his game's higher, and he's just a more natural fit in Sark's offense.
Yeah, Baxter can wear a defense down. I would say I don't think there's any recipe where it would look like a Bijan Roshan type split. I think it's going to be more of what we saw last season, right? Even with Baxter and Brooks. I think it's going to be something like that. And I think, honestly, it's going to look like a 60-40 type split like we saw in the Washington game where they were both pretty heavily featured. So, I mean, I don't know. And again, hot hand, favorable matchup. And I know Sark likes to have that bell cow. That's the thing. He's always really, preferring. That's why he's always had a 1,000-yard back. I think every year he's called plays. But people have thrown out there, is there the possibility, which I don't know, but is there a possibility you have 2,000-yard backs? I mean, if we start getting crazy and let's say Jaden Blue averages 6.5 yards per carry or something like that, right? Where, he's only carrying the ball 13, 15 times, but he's averaging 90, 100 yards a game, right? There could be the potential of that. So I think it's an interesting dynamic though, how it plays out, and ball security is going to be paramount.
I think if you look at the conversation in the lens of like total yards from scrimmage and, if we're using these guys more as receiving threats, then I think easily we could get 2 guys with 1,000-yard seasons. I mean, I think we were close last season. I think Baxter had 700-800 yards.
All purpose.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Baxter towards the end did creep up there.
Yeah. And so, I mean, and then you had Blue, who was, I think, close to 500 for the season just because of his elevated usage. And I mean, he had like 170 on 10 carries against Tech or something. And so, I mean, I think in the backfield, right? Like, I think I look at it more as who, like, these running back, I think it's an interesting point. I guess I'm going back a ways, but like, if you look at like who recruited these guys, like Char Choice, obviously a bang up running back recruiter and who he's brought in, but like, I think something that's overlooked a lot is, Baxter, again, more the natural fit in Sark's offense. Jonathan Brooks and Jaden Blue were both recruited by Stan Drayton, and both very talented, great finds. I mean, well, I say great find. Blue was the number 1 or 2 running back in the nation when he committed to Texas few years back. And then he sat out his senior year, and for some reason his stock dropped a lot, which I think was a little unfair to him. But I mean, I think for Jaden Blue and Jonathan Brooks, it's just, again, these guys, they're just such natural, talented backs that you just got to get them the ball. And, you know, they'll get the job done. But yeah, I think Baxter, you know, eventually Christian Clark, I think, can work into that mix. You can find ways to get him the ball. I think that he's coming along really well. But Wisner probably is your third back, I would imagine, just because he's got that, he improved it on special teams last year, got some reps late in the season, and like looks to be doing pretty good this spring, coming along pretty well. So yeah.
You know who we haven't mentioned is Savion.
Yeah, the tank.
Yeah, 5'10", 240.
With his beer gut out there. But that Wild Red package, we ran it. Hey, and he did a lot out of it. That package was a real thing for us last year. So, I mean, I can't ignore Savion in this case. I
wonder how many reps he gets Saturday. I don't want to have like a negative outlook on that. Like, but I want to see it. Like, obviously, I mean, he seems like an awesome teammate. Like, in all seriousness, I think he seems like a great guy to have in the program. I don't know. I got to wonder with how much versatility he's shown and like the position movement. Like, is he, I don't know.
It's hard to imagine he's in great cardio shape. I mean, that guy, he's like a freaking fire hydrant is what he looks like now. So yeah, I would assume Sark just said, hey, beef up. We're going to be running that Wildcat package down the red zone, because we struggled there. Like, whatever we did last year, we got to change something up because we were in the 80s in the country points wise in the red zone.
I think if we have Neto in that guard spot, that's going to help us in those tight areas of the field, short yardage situation.
Can I introduce a controversial opinion here? This is also on Sark, and I don't rag on him about too much, especially how the progress we've made. But the red zone play calling has been at times trash. Okay. Yeah. And starting with the formations, I'm not a big, to me, if you're going to be condensed down there, you got to be bullies. If your offensive line are not bullies and you're going these jumbo packages, 12, 13 personnel, all this type of stuff, then you need to be pushing people around. Your double teams have to be on point. If not, you got to get people out the box. You can't, that's the only other way you can help your football team, to me. And then, at least give the defense a thought that, hey, they might throw a slant, they might throw a fade, and then a handoff or something. But I just think that the way, the bad taste in our mouth from the OU sequence of those 4 snaps down there, where it was just, we got in our own way, I felt like, in a couple times. But that's been a problem. I'm glad you brought that up, because as good as we've been, I think the year before on short and 4th and short, 3rd and short, that was a big issue for us. And the thing is, Quinn is not good at quarterback sneaks. So that's not even part of the offense, right? So if he's getting under center, the defense doesn't even have to worry about certain things. So we have to, hopefully they fix that and they self-scouted because that cost them a football game last year.
The only time we've had a top half ranked red zone offense in terms of efficiency and scoring percentage was when we had Casey Thompson, Hudson Card, because they're, I think, a lot
dual
of
threat ability,
their dual threat ability to make throws on the run. And I don't think Quinn I think Quinn's getting better at that, but those runs that Quinn makes, because he gets to the outside and he can use that. I got long legs. I'm a guy that looks like I'm 5'5", sitting down, 6'2", standing up. So I know what it's like to be able to out there prancing like a deer, but he's got that sort of ride. And so it's easier to get to the outside. But if you see Quinn trying to move east to west, it's not pretty. And so, I think
he can run straight line, and he had 5 rushing touchdowns last year. And most of them came before he got hurt. So when we did, to your point, when we did call that zone read or whatever you want to call it, because it wasn't even quarterback power. It was basically him just reading the end, and people were crashing because Quinn doesn't ever run. Yeah. So he had several walk-in touchdowns. I just need that to be mixed in, right, to help with some of the problems.
Well, even you said the fade ball last year, I thought had been. Well, you have 80 Mitchell and Jatavian Sanders. You got to throw some of those have to be fade balls. Some of them, they're not high percentage throws, but you got 2 freak athletes at their positions. Go throw a couple fade balls at least if you're not hitting. And again, too, if you look back at Steve Sarkisian's time in Atlanta, That's what worries me because he got fired for that. They were not good in the red zone when he was in Atlanta. You can go back and look at it. They were like at best average in the NFL. Like he was great at moving the ball in between the 20s, but he for some reason he stalls down in the red zone. So I'm hoping he can figure that out. He has proven to be less stubborn. I mean, I forget what the game was where it was the Big 12 championship game where we should have kicked that field goal, and he said, "That's my bad, my fault." I like that that come to terms moment with yourself and everything like that. So I'm hoping in the offseason he dove deep into that, because if he can just be an average offense in the red zone, we win. We probably beat Washington last year. Honestly, we had 4 cracks inside the 15-yard line with really good weapons. You got to get one of those in.
Yeah, I think it's interesting too when you look at like some of the best red zone offenses in college football. They're often, I guess this is more just like to the idea that like a lot of these great like offensive minds really get stuffed in the red zone, because this whole idea of taking advantage of space, getting athletes the ball where they can make things happen after the catch. Like, I think that a lot of that idea is diminished in those tight areas. And I think that's where you see a lot of these old school defensive coordinators really like to prove their chops and really like to be physical. And yeah, that's to the detriment of a guy like Steve Sarkisian, or to, let's say, like Lincoln Riley, when he's got the rare occasions when he's had like a pro style quarterback. And so
I think he gets too cute too. Like the Murphy and Sweat thing's cool and everything, like to run him out there. Well, how about you run 2 extra offensive linemen out there that know how to block? Like you saw in the Oklahoma game, there's touchdowns there if one of them blocks. If one of them blocks, and I don't expect them to be great blockers, because they shouldn't be asked to do that. Yeah, exactly.
we're probably going to see a lot of Malik Ogbo if that's the case this year. I think kind of that hybrid tight end role. But yeah, I mean, yeah, something I think he just needs to simplify it to start, especially when you're going to have as good of an offensive line as you have this year. Because you're not going to have that guy you can chuck the ball up to on the outside. So you don't have that AD Mitchell cheat code like you did in the Washington game or the Houston game or whatever game he made some awesome touchdown catch. And
yeah,
so, yeah.
You know, Kyle Flood is also, you know how O-line coaches are. They take stuff like that personally.
Yeah.
And you know he's going to be in his kid's ear. You know, they've probably, I can only imagine how many times they've watched that OU tape. Even as all the success they had after the fact, because it still comes down to, hey, those phone booth moments, those moments of truth, those 50-50 moments, we have to be better than our opponent. That's where Georgia never loses. That's where Michigan won a national championship last year, right? That those physical phone booth moments. And you even look at the NFL level, Kansas City and San Francisco. Several times it came down to phone booth football. So, you know, you're going to be emphasizing that. Where I think the good news is for us as Texas fans is with Steve Sarkisian, he is shown me that he will make adjustments to himself. He had a problem with second half stuff coming into last season. And I watched him fix those things. I watched him be better at adjusting to his opponents or saving some of his script for later in the game or being quicker to adjust. And that was something that he struggled with the first 2 seasons at Texas. So if he can improve those things and show me that he can change his habits, then I think the red zone thing he can also change as well.
Yeah, I think another thing he's going to have to do this year too, and I know he doesn't like to do that, as history has shown, is rotate wide receivers more. I think you may not have the top end talent that you had with Xavier Worthy and AD Mitchell, but you definitely have more depth than you have had in a very long time. I think there's 6-7 guys that I'd be comfortable with seeing the field. So hopefully you can rotate, get these guys in, and get them chances.
I just don't know how much last year you could afford to take Xavier Worthy and Adonai Mitchell off the field, whereas this year I don't know. I think Bond is going to be a good guy to go to, probably 8 times, 10 times a game. But like, yeah, none of these guys, I think, in the receiver core more so than maybe your top 3 compared to the next 3, there's not going to be as big of a drop off last year as compared to last year between your top 3 and your next 3 down on the depth chart.
I think the roles last year were also a lot more determined, right? I mean, it was very clear AD Mitchell was your boundary guy. It was very clear Xavier Worthy was going to play to the field. It was very clear Jordan Whittington was at his best in the slot when we went 11 personnel. And yeah, the bulk of the snaps, I didn't have a problem with how they did it. I agree with y'all. It's even, the only time you really played with it was when, Worthy started getting banged up a little bit. Yeah. But other than that, I mean, yeah, you're going to roll with 2 guys that are potentially going to be first-round picks in a couple weeks, right? So it makes sense, and that he plays with it from a NFL standpoint there. But I agree, you got to adjust to your personnel, and I think it'll be a advantage to Texas this season to play multiple guys just to give different looks to the defense, because we have a lot of guys with a lot of speed that are going to be better with the ball in their hands, quicker. I want to see more RPO stuff this year, just because that's the type of personnel we have, right? I mean, I don't have the AD Mitchell's not going to bail me out on the outside on a comeback route, just out muscling somebody. But what I can bank on is, some of the shallow cross stuff that Ohio State made real famous, getting somebody the ball on the move and then maybe taking it to the house. I think we're going to have a lot of those opportunities this year.